When dealing with application problems involving quadratic functions, there are a few things to keep in mind. The first one is to classify the type of word problem that you are dealing with as either a value problem or a maximum and minimum problem. This step is extremely important because it is going to tell you how to approach the problem and what you need to do to solve the problem. Meaning, do you need to set the quadratic equation equal to 0 and solve, or do you need to complete the square and find the vertex? Within the 3 videos on this lesson that we are going to do, we are going to see 2 value problems and 1 max-min style problem, and I will go through detail then on how you know how to identify if it is a value or a max-min style problem. Another thing to consider is sketching a diagram to help you understand the situation if possible. Also, write out the equation for a specific problem. In this video, the equation is given for us, but in the other 2 problems in the other videos, we are going to have to create the equation. Then we need to rearrange the quadratic either into standard form, so we could then solve it by factoring or using the quadratic formula. Note that it is equal to 0. Or do we just need to rearrange into vertex form so we can find the maximum or minimum? And then at the end, it's always good to read the question again and make sure you fully answer the question. So just because you did the math and you found a bunch of numbers, what does the question actually want you to answer? So in the first question that we are going to look at, we are told that a baseball was hit into the air and its height h is in meters. It's given by the function h equals 1 plus 30t minus 5t squared, whereas t is time in seconds. And we are asked, how long is the ball in the air for? So problems like this are pretty easy to visualize. You have a baseball player and the ball hits the bat, comes up, and lands, giving it that parabolic shape. So it lands about here. So you can actually almost see a grid where the x-axis is your time in seconds and your y-axis is your height in meters. So we're asked how long the ball is for in the air. So we are interested in this value here. At this value, we know that the height is 0 because it's landed on the ground. And we're trying to find the time, which is actually the x-intercept. So now that we understand what the question is asking, we must now identify, are we finding the value? Is this a value problem? Are we finding the maximum or minimum? So we are finding the value of the time when the ball hits the ground. So this is actually a value question. We're finding the value of time. We are not asked when the ball reaches a maximum height, the maximum or what the maximum height of the ball is. We're not interested in the maximum. So it is not a maximum or minimum question. Usually maximum and minimum questions are easier to spot because they'll have the word maximum or minimum in the question or other similar wording such as the greatest or the least. So in value problems, what we want to do is actually we're solving for t. When you are solving for a variable in a quadratic equation, that is when you make the equation equal to 0. And we already knew we could do this because at this point, our height is 0. So we are going to put 0 in for h. So I get 0 equals 1 plus 30t minus 5t squared. This is a quadratic that I need to solve for. I like having my t squared value first. So I'm going to rearrange this. And I also notice my t value is negative. So what I'm going to do is bring this to the other side so it's positive. Then I'm going to bring the 30t to the other side so it's negative, and the 1 to the other side so it's negative as well, just so I don't have that negative t squared. So now I get an equation that looks a little bit more comfortable to factor. 5t squared minus 30t minus 1. You don't actually need to do this because you can always common factor out a negative, or it looks like in this example I'm going to have to use the quadratic formula. So having an a value that's negative is not a big deal. I just always like my coefficient in front of my x squared, or in this case t squared, to be positive. So to solve, I do try to factor first. It's not a simple trinomial because I cannot take a common factor of 5 out. So then I try to do decomposition by finding two numbers that multiply to -5 and add to -30. And that's not possible, so I'm not able to factor this. So now I'm going to use the quadratic formula. So when I use the quadratic formula, I get this when I substitute in, and then I will simplify. And I'm going to use my calculator to find my answers as decimals. And I get two solutions. One at time is 6.033. The other one time is -0.033. I can't have negative time in the context of this problem, so I get rid of that solution. So therefore, the ball is in the air for 6.033 seconds. I do recommend going back, rereading the question, making sure that you fully answer the question and that you use the correct units.